We begin once again with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, with Allah's signature, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We're very, very thankful for the opportunities that Allah has set before us in managing this new information called nunetics and getting the best out of it that Allah has intended for us. The understanding of the Quran based on the Arabic letter system is a unique experience, especially here in this day and time and in the Western part of the world. As I've said to you, I'm believing that about 1,000 years ago or so, that Muslims, generally speaking, were aware that each and every Arabic letter had its own unique meaning. And that's indicated in some of the statements by some of the more notable scholars among Muslims of that day and time, namely Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi, and there are several other Muslim scholars of that time who indicated that they had a knowledge of what Arabic letters actually meant. And I believe it's in one popular hadith also narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, where Muhammad the Prophet is reported to have said that every letter is significant. I'm paraphrasing just a bit. And he said, I don't only mean Alif, Lam, Mim as a statement. I mean that Alif has its own meaning, Lam has its own meaning, Mim has its own meaning. So according to that hadith, our Prophet Muhammad himself was aware that each and every letter had its own meaning. The sister languages to Arabic, such as Hebrew and Aramaic, also indicate that each of those letters have their own unique meaning. These are things that the average one of us can find online if you just Google Hebrew letters or Greek letters even. It doesn't even have to be in the Semitic family. Just go to Wikipedia and Google meanings for Greek letters or meanings for Hebrew letters or meanings for even Arabic letters, but they're not going to give you what you're going to get studying nunetics. None of them are going to give you what you're getting studying nunetics because they don't have meanings for each and every letter, especially as they correlate with parts of the human body, things in the environment, and abstract ideas. They're not going to have those three levels. If you find it, I'll give you a reward that you've never received before in your life. Find me another letter system like nunetics that gives you the levels of understanding that we're giving you. And I will find a reward for you because you would have aptly deserved one. But you're not going to find it, so I don't have to try to pull together a reward like that. You're not going to find it. This is a gift that Allah has given specifically to us. And when I say us, I'm talking about the African American people, generally speaking, not just the Muslim African Americans. The African Americans have earned the reward of nunetics because language is one of the first things that was taken from the African upon that sojourn from Africa to the shores of North America. The first thing they did was took our tongues away, sometimes literally took our tongues right out of our mouths. So what would be justice? Justice would be in returning our ability to speak and understand language and communication, returning that ability to us. And that's what nunetics is doing on a level that far surpasses where some of the top scholars of linguistics as we speak are. It surpasses where they are right now. And I've already had some of them admit that they've never seen this level of phenomenon in terms of the understanding of each and every Arabic letter, not to mention the understanding of each and every English letter that we've covered in the book called the N-word, if you don't have that. So we want to understand language. We want to understand this ability to communicate and to be able to communicate on a level that is so effective that the world's attention becomes focused upon our expression. The world's attention was turned towards the African American as a person practicing nothing but tomfoolery, foolishness, ham-like behavior, as they would call it. You know, a comedian who does nothing but joke around, they call him a big ham. They get that from the negative references that they have placed upon the African American people since being in this part of the world. So we no longer want to be in that ham image, but in order to have that image dissipate, we're going to have to do something differently than what the ham image has done. So instead of telling a whole bunch of foolish and rude and profane jokes, we're now going to turn this tongue around and use it for the most eloquent expression of concepts that this world has ever heard, especially in this day and time. And those concepts are going to be led by our understanding and our rational approach to the Quran itself, not to mention other fields of knowledge, but the Quran is at the top of the list. So welcome once again to the University Online Learning course on this Sunday, July 25, 2021. I am your international instructor, Benjamin Bilal, and my subject for today is going to be Adam, Eve, and the serpent, in the Bible and in the Quran. So pay close attention. I want to begin by saying that Imam W.D. Muhammad once stated that, quote, "What Allah did for me, he will do for another," end quote. So pay attention to my explanations and then you decide. This world has been designed by social schemers to move upon a hidden logic. The image of the serpent in the Bible is given to us in order to depict that logic and how it advances itself upon the earth, but in a secretive manner. The word leg, L-E-G, is where we get the word logic, L-O-G-I-C. The human being is supposed to be supported by two logics. One of those logics is moral logic and the other is rational logic. Those are the two legs that are supposed to support the human intellect. The legs of the serpent are not visible. That is because it advances itself upon its muscles, and its muscles are connected to its motor skills. This biblical story is not talking about a serpent in the midst of a garden thousands of years ago. It is referring to a serpent which exists in all of us that is called the instinctive brain and the instinctive nature. That's the serpent in you. Our instincts are unseen and it advances itself upon the motor skills we develop based on our constant repetition of behaviors that are taught to us. Eventually, these behaviors become part and parcel of our instinctive nature. So just to recap, when the Bible is speaking about the serpent, it is speaking about something that each and every one of us as human beings has possession of, created by the source creator of us all. And that is our instinctive nature, the nature in us that runs our biology, the nature in us that knows what to do, when to do, and how to do, and actually champions the cause of survival in each and everything that lives. And again, it's connected to what are called our motor skills. So what is a motor skill? A motor skill is a learned ability to cause a predetermined movement outcome with maximum certainty. Motor learning is the relatively permanent change in the ability to perform a skill as a result of practice or experience. Performance is an act of executing a motor skill. The goal of motor skill is to optimize the ability to perform the skill at the rate of success, precision, and to reduce the energy consumption required for performance. Continuous practice of a specific motor skill will result in a greatly improved performance. And that is from Wikipedia. Our instincts are what influences our behavior the most. Repeating, It is our instincts that are responsible for influencing the things that we do as behavior the most, because our instincts appear to be innocent in us. So we don't pay them a whole lot of mind. Eating is an instinct. Drinking is an instinct. Playing around is an instinct. Copulating and resting are normal instinctive behaviors that are necessary for keeping ourselves biologically in existence. If we don't eat, drink, play, exercise our muscles, have sex, reproduce, and sleep or rest, if we don't do those things, we will take ourselves out of existence as biological creatures. The serpent represents the natural inclination to preserve one's self on the material or biological level of existence. However, when that material or biological nature is manipulated to believe that it needs other than or much more than these natural processes in order to survive, that is when the human being begins to run into trouble. So let me simplify that for you. We have eating, drinking, playing, copulating, and resting as natural instinctive urges in us. But when something else comes into the picture that encourages us to take those appetites and to take those instinctive drives and drive them into the extremes so that we overeat, we oversleep, we overdrink or drink the wrong things, we pay too much attention to sexual habits and behavior, etc. Those same instinctive drives that the source creator put in us and created in us for normal kinds of pleasure, consideration, and advancement in this life of biology. When we accept or are connived into taking those appetites and blowing them into the extremes, that's when the human being becomes threatened as a thinking creature. So it is not our natural instincts that are encouraging us to go to these extremes. It is the manipulation of social schemers who have encouraged these abnormal behaviors in us. The serpent that Moses raised in the wilderness, according to the Bible, and the serpent that Musa in the Quran is seen as using in order to defeat Pharaoh. Those serpents are indicative of natural urges and instincts. Allah asked Moses about that serpent when he connected his mind with activities being performed by his staff. Allah said, "What is that in your right hand?" And Moses or Musa went on to explain the various usages of that staff. And Allah said, "Let it go. Throw it away from you." And it became an anaconda-like creature. And Allah said, "Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. It's just your instinctive drive gone wild." He said, reach out and grab hold of it. And when he grabbed hold of it, Allah actually uses another name for the snake. The first name that he gave was Asa, which is like an anaconda-like sized snake. But the second level of snake that he was told to grab hold of, when he reached out to grab it, it became like a garden snake. You know those snakes, a garden snake. In other words, it became manageable. Isn't that wonderful? That the instincts or the urges in the human being can be created to go to extremes and create all kinds of fears in society because people want to rob and pillage and rape and all of those things that are the end result of instinctive nature gone wild. But Allah gave Musa the science for how to control those appetites and urges and instincts. That's what Musa represents. When you allow your mind to come into the kind of behavior which causes it to become a musing tool for you, something that is used to muse, not to be amused, but to muse, to figure out your way through the maze so that you won't be amazed at what you run into. You look at the pit stop, you look at the obstacle course, you look at what's blocking your way, and you will instinctively learn which way to go and which way to not go, because it won't lead you to the end of the hall and to freedom. This serpent, I repeat, represents the natural inclination to preserve oneself on the material or biological level of existence. However, when that material or biological nature is manipulated to believe that it needs more or other than what's natural for it, then these material processes will become haywire processes. And that, I repeat, is when the human being, as a thinker, begins to run into trouble. It is the manipulation of these urges, the manipulation of these instincts and drives in us that are intentionally put in front of us by those who are in leadership positions as social manipulators and schemers. They are the ones who have encouraged these abnormal behaviors in us. The Quran was revealed in order to correct that picture and to bring all things back into respect for their fitra-based programming, established by not the world's force creators, but established by the world's source creator, known as Allah in the Quran, and by other beautiful names in previous scriptures to the Quran. The word behavior is from the word behave, Behave, and behave or behave is from the Semitic words hava, which is Hebrew, and hawa, which is Arabic, both of which refer to breath and desires. Repeating, the words hava, which is Hebrew, and hawa, which is Arabic, both refer to the idea of breathing or breath, as well as desires. All creatures who breathe possess desires. We desire things that we want to have. The word have is from the Hebrew word hava, which means to desire. In Hebrew, it's also pronounced hiva, which is where we get the biblical word Eve from heave or hiva. Eve is breath. Eve is also symbolic of your emotionality. Eve is also symbolic of the culture itself. So Eve is to be interpreted on these various levels of understanding. We cannot breathe without the ability to take in breath, give out breath. We cannot live and sustain ourselves without the ability to be emotional, to exert our emotions, or to feel sensitivity within our emotional body. We can't be what's called the living as human beings without being able to do that. And we're not going to be adequate as human thinkers if we don't learn how the culture and all of the things that it creates in us as desires is working either for or against us. So we need to understand our life on these three various levels: breath and what sustains it adequately, emotionality and what keeps that emotionality in check or in balance, and also on the cultural level and what is responsible for supporting the equilibrium within culture so that we don't go to cultural extremes, as you see many of the people in the Western part of the world especially doing as we speak. We cannot breathe without the cultivation of agriculture. You've heard that many times, that if all of the trees disappeared, human beings would also die, because what the vegetation breathes out, the human being has to breathe in. So if there were no agriculture, there would be no human. Think about what's being said. When Allah told Muhammad to Iqra, which they translate as read, it was actually a demand on his intellect to begin breathing. So when you read that in the Quran, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Those who know how to translate do so. If not, it's not important for this particular part of the discussion. Understand that the word ikra has been translated into English as R-E-A-D, or read. So reading is an appeal to the human intellect. And if you don't know how to read, it means that the intellect has not yet learned how to breathe. So if the intellect has not learned how to read and the intellect has not learned how to breathe, then it's very, very possible that you could be walking around in that biology you call a body, but be dead, in need, as they say, of a checkup from the neck up, because the intellect has not become alive. The word for this breathing process in the intellect in the Quran is the word nafs, N-A-F-S in English, nun fa sin in Arabic. So let's look at what those three letters represent. And this is part of the Fitra Arabic class that I promised you also. When you put the letters nun fa together in any Arabic word, it's going to signify breathing. And when you add the third radical, the letter sin, sin is indicative of what is taking place in the intellect itself as far as it being able to chew on information, because sin represents the brilliance of the teeth when the teeth are chewing. When the teeth engage something like miswak or even certain other kinds of herbs, foods, etc., whatever may have been existing on the teeth, the surface of the teeth as film or residue, will be removed by the chewing motion of that food in the mouth. So the letter sin, I repeat, came to represent the human intellect, as the human intellect removes the residue from its own mind by chewing on adequate information. And keep in mind, dear Muslims, that the word sunnah is born out of this letter sin. The word sunnah. So that means that if you call yourself practicing the sunnah of Muhammad, it should show mostly in the brilliance connected to your intellect, not to your utterings and mutterings of Arabic phrases and calling that the sunnah, not to how you dress in your thawb or in your khimar or in your kufi, or, you're counting on your zikr beads and all of that, and you call that practicing the sunnah of Muhammad. Those exterior things have absolutely zero to do with practicing what's called a sunnah of Muhammad. The sunnah of Muhammad can best be represented in when the mind becomes brilliant due to its fascination with information. The English-speaking world even gets the word sun, S-U-N, from the word sunnah. And what does the sun do? The sun shows brilliance. The sun shows an enlightenment process from its dawning all of the way to its setting. So you have to understand what language is all about. And that's what nunetics is here to explain to you, so that you can go straight to God's fitrah, to Mother Nature, for your meanings, for Quranic words, and bypass the scholars altogether, including Instructor Bilal. If he's saying something that's outside of the fitrah, then he's saying something that's outside of the Quran. And you don't have to pay attention to that, even if Instructor Bilal is giving it to you. But I do my level best to try to bring you only information that is consistent with God's fitrah. So continue to pay attention.